Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Dadas Show, coming to you from Gong Hills Hotel here in Nairobi. I'm your host, Ashiko Mbune. As our name suggests, the Dadas Show aspires to promote the spirit of sisterhood by creating an open and safe platform for women to discuss any and all issues affecting their health, their family, their jobs, their careers, so that we can find a common and a lasting solution that will help all of us. Mental health related criminal cases are on the rise in Kenya. Most recently, and actually case in point, is one such sad case where a 2-year-old was killed by the toddler's mother. The events around the very heinous act and the macabre happenings around what happened to the girl brought to the forefront. The question is, was there any issue of mental health or mental illness? And this conversation has been happening in very many platforms. And the questions that have risen are, what is mental illness? And what are some of the signs and the symptoms? On this episode of the Dadas Show, and especially in respect to the Mental Awareness Month, we will look at mental health. In-depth look at mental health in an attempt to answer some of the questions that have come up in various forums in the recent past, so that such unfortunate cases will never happen again. As always, we encourage you at home to take part in this and any other conversation that we may have on all our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1. We look forward to hearing from you. Give us your feedback, give us your comments, questions about this topic and any other. Let us hear what you think about today's topic and any other topic we may have. Now, before we jump in and meet a wonderful group of panelists that have brought together to address this issue, let's have a look at the following feature.
Mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. With a population of over 47 million people, Kenya is a prime example of a national uniquely impacted with generational trends that suggest mental health concerns are on the rise. The Kenyan National Commissions of Human Rights estimates that 25% and 40% of outpatients and inpatients suffer from mental health conditions. The most frequent diagnoses of mental illness made in general hospital settings are depression, substance abuse, stress, and anxiety disorder. A WHO report in 2017 ranked Kenya as the 5th among African countries with elevated depression cases, with global statistics indicating that approximately 2 million people suffer from depression. People with mental health conditions are more likely to experience lower level mental well-being, but this is not always or necessarily the case. We spoke to Ian, who was diagnosed with bipolar.
That I'm battling, outside of the depression that came before. Because it's a depression that hit me in 2017, which led to the bipolar manifesting itself as a side effect of the depression.
Despite the fact that his family supports him, his mother is yet to come to terms with the reality. Ian attributes his healing process to his friends at the university who intervened while he was at his lowest.
Okay, you see, when I saw that video of my classmates praying for me, it was the hope that they gave me by that support that they showed that actually led me to healing. My family was also very supportive, because they were the ones taking care of me when I was paralyzed. They were learning the process. It was something new to all of us. Yeah. I mean, even till now, my mom hasn't fully accepted everything. She always tries to make me be the person I was before depression, who is dead and gone. The homie is dead and gone. Dead and gone.
The government has been responsive to the mental health situation in the country and is working towards engaging the necessary bodies to curb the cases.
We are one of the first countries in the region to have developed a mental health case, which shows the commitment of the government to be able to tell us what we need, where we are, and where are the gaps. And in this, we are working with other partners to be able to bridge the gap and ensure that we mainstream mental health services into the national public health emergencies and humanitarian crises, and also in the routine healthcare service delivery.
In the context of national efforts to strengthen mental health, it is vital to not only protect and promote the mental well-being of all, but also to address the needs of people with mental health conditions and intervention for workers.
Welcome back. So joining me to discuss mental health in this Mental Health Awareness Month is a wonderful panel. As mentioned, we have brought in industry expert and lived experiences, people who have actually gone through and endured perhaps either living with or dealing with somebody with mental illness. This is in a bid to be able to answer some of the questions that have come up in the recent past so that we can be able to educate our audience and also the viewers at large in regards to mental health. So to start us off, I have Dr. Stacey Njani, who is a resident psychiatrist. And she says she's a resident in Mathare, but she's still finishing. She's told me not to call her a complete psychiatrist.
Yes, I'm a resident psychiatrist in University of Nairobi, and I work at Mathare Hospital.
Okay.
Yes.
So I know whenever we talk about mental illness, the first thing that comes to mind is Mathare Hospital. And we've been talking about some of the stereotypes that are associated with the hospital, and would be very happy if Stacey can be able to unpack some of this and demystify some of the stereotypes. So next to her, I have Madam Kellen Kisila. Kellen Kisila is very crucial to this panel because she's a caregiver and a relative to a schizophrenic patient. We will find out what it's schizophrenia. It's normally quite a mouthful. Schizophrenia means. And remember, when we are talking mental health and poor mental health or mental illness, it just does not affect one person. It affects the whole family. So we really do want to hear from the horse's mouth. How has it been for them till where they are? What has their journey been? So karibu sana, Kellen. And finally, we have Madam Agnes Nyaga, who is a counseling psychologist and a certified addiction counselor. So when we are talking mental health, how do we know what are the factors that cause poor mental health? She's definitely the go-to person for that. And of course, I have to acknowledge my wonderful audience. Thank you so much for making time to sit with us to discuss this very crucial topic, and this is an issue that people need to take on head on, and as the Dadas show, we are happy to proceed with that. So to get the ball rolling, I'll start off with you, Dr. Njani. Thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedule. I know a doctor's job never ends, so asante sana for making time to come and sit with us.
Thank you for having me.
As mentioned, mental health has been on the spotlight lately.
Yeah.
And there are people who are calling it the new kid on the block. But especially after the sad incidences that we witnessed, questions such as what is mental illness and what role it played in the whole scenario have been on the rise. So it's on everybody's lips. Could you kindly expound on this? What's your take on what is mental health? What is mental illness? And what role can it play in such an incident?
Thank you for that question. It's a pleasure to be here. So I think to start off, it would be best to start off by defining what mental health is. So mental health is defined as a state of well-being that you are able to undertake and withstand the day-to-day stresses of life, progress your own individual life, as well as contribute to the community you exist in. So when we talk about mental illness and mental disorders, those are the kind of spaces that we see change. This person cannot function as an individual. This person is having a hard time participating and contributing to the community. If anything, they seem to be more like detrimental to the community.
Yes.
So with mental illness, it's a broad term that we can use to define specifically mental disorders that we have that are named, but also the mental states that one can be in that present with dysfunction, present you at risk of substance use, at risk of self-harm and suicide. So you can be in a mental state that's brief, that causes you to be at risk of all these things. And so when I say mental disorder now, I'd like to define it as clinically significant change in behavior, cognition, and how this person interprets all of that for themselves. So when we say clinically significant, what we like to use as a measure of that is your behavior and your way you're perceiving your environment affecting your work, affecting you at school if you're a student, or affecting your interactions with your peers and your family at home. So you find someone can't interact with their partner, their children, suddenly that's become difficult. The partners will bring them to hospital and say, hey, this day is something small, and he sets him off. Something small, and she's yelling at everyone. So that's what we define as clinically significant. It has to be affecting your day-to-day, your work, your school, your productivity for us to say you have a mental disorder. So if it's not gotten to the point of affecting that and you're at risk, then we can say your mental state is in the sliding scale of the mental illness. So a summary of how I would put it is mental health and illness is a spectrum.
Yes.
So on one hand, we are mentally healthy, and on the other hand, we have the mental illness. And all of us exist somewhere in this plane.
Okay.
At different times in our lives, with different things that are going on in the society we're in, or if there's substance use, that will trigger you into anywhere in this space. So it's very difficult to say that me, I'm mentally healthy.
Yes.
That's very difficult to say. At any given time, you're somewhere on that scale.
So it's almost like a yo-yo effect.
Yes,
Well,
yes,
at one point you
yes.
can be here, at another point you can be here.
Yes, yes.
Oh, wow. Well, that's really well put, and thank you so much for that. So I'll move on to Kellen. So Kellen, you're a caregiver and of course a relative with someone who suffers from a mental illness. What are some of the symptoms that you and your family witnessed until you got to where you are right now? You know, if it's okay with you, please share with us your story.
Yeah, I'm a fourth born of siblings of 5. So it's my brother, my elder brother, who had schizophrenia. Now I will explain what I saw when I was young.
Yes.
And the first thing I was saying, the first time that I saw there is something wrong, because I was very little, is he tried to commit suicide. I can't remember all that incident, because I saw where he hanged his rope, and he just fell down. Then he was taken to hospital. That is one thing you notice, that there is something wrong, even though I didn't know the condition. I didn't know which condition he had. And then he would also, there is also hallucinations that happens, and then they don't sleep. He can talk the whole night. The whole night, from even in the morning sometimes. He will lock himself in his room, he just talks. And then some other symptoms is that you will notice he will accuse you to things that you didn't do. Sema, where Kellen, you've taken my things. Sometimes he will state, you stop interfering in my life, things that you're not associated. So you see there is something that is not actually right. And also sometimes coordination, the thinking ability is also hampered. So those are some things that we saw. Also, I can say when they are extremely sick, we become the enemy, the family members. Because he will attack you. Like just recently he came to my house and said, we motoni nitakudunga kisu, things like that. Now you will notice that there is something wrong and he is very sick. But when he is with other people in the society, he is normal. He's normal with them. But when he comes to the family members, he's very violent and also sometimes abusive. And also when they're in extreme cases, for them to be taken to hospital, we've had even neighbors coming and reporting cases like he has thrown a stone to somebody. He will also abuse somebody he knows, if it is a friend on the road. Those are things that now we know it's an extreme. So schizophrenia has so many symptoms. And also, yeah, they don't know how to hygiene. It's another problem. They cannot keep good hygiene to themselves. So those are some of the things that I've seen as I grew and witnessed. Yeah.
So how has it been for you as a family? Because I mean, I can only imagine, you know, you grew up and then you're being told a sibling, you know, someone who you're supposed to be looking up to is a certain way, you know, you maybe sometimes you don't even feel safe in the house. Someone is talking to himself the whole night. So I don't want to ask about the whole family, but how has it been for you, having someone who is that close to you going through that?
Wow, it has been a journey because nobody explained it to me for a very long time. You know, our African culture.
Yes.
They hide. I don't know why they hide. They don't tell you your brother or your siblings is suffering from this. So it took me so many years to discover that what my brother is suffering from is schizophrenia. Because I would see the signs too. Sometimes he would run away, you know, incidences. And it was also traumatic for me because he was very close. We were friends. And I used to look up to him. He was very clever. Yes, in his primary school, he used to get, I used to take his papers, A. I said, wow, I need to get like this. He's very sharp. Yeah, so it has not been easy for me because also you have to accept that this is a family member who is unwell. And also stigma from the society, how the society, and also some people will see you as a family. You feel that loneliness because you're stigmatized. It's like there's something wrong with your family, you know, things like that. Yeah. So yeah, also because you'll find with different, my family suffers from different chronic conditions. Also financially is a challenge because these are diseases that they don't go away. Somebody will,
they need constant medical intervention.
Medical intervention. So financial challenges are there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for what you're going through, Kellen, as in, you know, and that even makes me tip my hat off to you for even making time to come and sit here with us. With everything that is going on in the background. Now, speaking about everything that is going on in the background, Madam Nyaga, you know, in light of what both of the panelists have touched on, I'm curious, from a psychological point of view, what are some of the factors that attribute to poor mental health?
Thank you, Madam Ashiko. The psychological, according to the psychology or psychologists who I'm one of, you asked what predisposes one to getting or to acquiring mental disorders, or the mental faculties is no longer in an orderly form. You know, what happens? Where did it all start? And I did say there are many factors that can be attributed to mental disorders, and one of them is genetics. Genetics in the sense that it is not the liking of someone that they got into it, but he may have gotten it from his descendants, the father, the mother, or someone along the line. So that is one of them, and it's unfortunate even when one has to be stigmatized for having been born in a family, maybe a long time, not the immediate family, but along the line, and getting into it. I think it's a condition that would call for empathy as opposed to stigma.
Yes.
The second one is environment. Environment meaning where this individual has grown, you know, what is the environment around where he grew up or she grew up. And whatever disorder it is, it doesn't happen. There is a progression, there is a history of it. Maybe poverty could be one of them. Maybe it could be trauma You know, maybe as a child one was abandoned, rejected, or defranchised for whatever reason. And also substance abuse, the use. And when I say substance abuse, I mean the use of psychoactive drugs, which are very, very many, and whereby the area of focus for the psychoactive substances, bangi, mugoka, you know, name it, heroin, cocaine, all those, their focal point of activity is actually the brain.
Yes.
So prolonged exposure to that could actually eventually end up to schizophrenia. Secondary is the availability. You know, is it readily available, and did anybody notice that something was going wrong? So the other cause or predisposition would be dysfunctionality in families. You know, probably there is someone abusing, there is domestic violence, all those, and this family has children who are growing within that setup, and it affects. And the other source also could be what we call developmental trauma. You know, it's not a one-off. You grow up exposed to a lot of trauma, and that, if not addressed, end up being what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are only but a few of what may cause mental illness.
Wow. When you think about that, there are factors that are caused. So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. I think even more now, we really need to explore. Dr. Stacey, from your extensive knowledge and experience, what are some of the mental disorders that we have?
So when it comes to mental disorders, there are quite a number. It's a very vast, long list with categories and subcategories.
Give us the most common ones in the country.
So I think the best way, or how I would want to help the public understand, is maybe I can list the general typical signs and symptoms of all the disorders, and then give you specific disorders and what will be changed in each of them.
Okay.
So for instance, what we use in the mental health space is to say disturbance of something. So disturbance of a normal state. So for instance, disturbance of emotion and mood. So if, for instance, you are prone to worry and you're worrying beyond the situation that's making you worry, and even when the stressor is removed, you're still worrying. And you're getting sad and depressed, that kind of a disturbance can result in something like depression. We also have something like disturbance of, still in the mood, we have irritability. So we see the people who are very irritable, very quick to anger. So there is a normal irritability of you having a bad day, and then there's the irritability where even when no one has spoken to you, the first person who speaks to you, you're biting the head off. You're snapping at them. So that's kind of change in your partner, in your relative, in your sibling, in anyone around you. If you notice that kind of change, that should raise alarm. So then we have disturbance of perception. So when I say perception, I mean when you're looking at me, there's something you're seeing. You're seeing Dr. Stacey seated here, she's speaking to you, we're in a room with other people. There are people who, that's not the reality they're perceiving. And one example is like her brother. So when you have schizophrenia, perception of your environment is completely different.
Is that the same as hallucinations?
Yes, so an example is hallucination. So there's different levels of disturbance in perception. So for instance, there's what we call an illusion, where at night you're walking and then a tree moves in the wind and you think it's a person. Okay. And everyone, I think, has had that experience where when you're a bit distracted, you're a bit on edge.
You did see something, you make me get a little bit
I saw you panic.
I've seen those trees move.
No. Illusions are more or less normal. They're not a symptom of anything severe, unless they're part of something bigger. Then we have what we call now the hallucinations. Now hallucinations, there's no stimuli to make you see that thing. So we are here, we're talking, and it's me seated here, and then you see a cat pass by. But no one else has seen that, and you're so convinced that there's been a cat in the room. So that's what hallucination is. No, that can be in very many different disorders, but more so it tends to be in the schizophrenia patients. Another disturbance will be in what can I say, attention.
Yes.
Attention and concentration. So you find that the people who can't read a line in a sentence in a book, they can't have a conversation beyond 5 minutes. And this is someone who was having that conversation with you before. Someone who's doing well in school, they're performing their duties, and suddenly the teacher is calling, hey, your son is not being able to pay attention in class. Or someone is at work and they're no longer hitting the targets because they can't sit down and do the task at hand.
They can't sit still.
Yeah, so when you start to see changes like those are the kinds of symptoms that we see changing in people with mental disorders. So to list a couple of disorders that we have commonly, I think the most common we all know about is depression.
Yes.
So depression is one of the most common ones, and its signs and symptoms, I would list a few, are someone suddenly is no longer interested in the activities that they once were. So
Maybe
this
we just list them and then we can get into the
okay.
list.
So we have depression.
Depression.
Yes. We have bipolar mood disorder.
Yes.
We have anxiety disorders.
Okay.
We have schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. We have substance use disorder. We have attention deficit disorder. And then we also have personality disorders, eating disorders. Basically, you can put
It's
disorder
just many.
after everything. Yes,
Everything
sleep
disorder,
disorders.
eating
Yes,
disorder,
anything that's
sleeping
normal
disorder.
gets dysfunctional, it
Yeah.
becomes a mental disorder.
Okay.
Yes.
And that is the most reason as to why then they really need to be discussed, and they need to be,
Yes.
because we might be going around because we are all doctors all of a sudden because we have Google, and we misdiagnose
Yes,
everybody.
yes.
And we kept on using the wrong words. It's only recently that I stopped talking about the weather being bipolar.
Yes,
And
yes,
somebody
yes.
actually from these people's profession just told me, do you really understand the weight of the statement that you've just said? I
Right.
mean, it's actually a condition, and this and this and this. And there I was, accusing the weather of being all of that. And I said, oh, okay, fine. Then, every day you learn something new. Now, before we go on break, Kellen, I want you to tell me something. It's already granted that myself and my audience and our viewers at home, there's still a gap in the information that we know. What are some of the challenges that you have experienced in terms of people's perception? And what are some of the lessons that you have also learned?
People don't really understand the person is sick. And there are some symptoms that, like what I've talked about, when he is extremely sick, people don't know. I've had that challenge because he will come to my house, the thinking, the how he communicates is irrational. Anasema mtu amenifuata, ama anakuja na kuambia wacha kufuata mambo yangu. He won't enter. He's very harsh, while aggressive. But when he speaks to my neighbor there, he's very well. So neighbors anambia, nimekutana na brother yako and he's doing very well. Anambia, oh, okay. I actually tell him he's very, very sick. In fact, for him to be just admitted the other day, is that I even stopped now opening my door because he came and threatened, so I was like, now this is extremely sick. But with the neighbor out there, they won't understand why you're not even opening for him. Because for you, you're fearing he can take that action on you. And he's aggressive, and he's sick, and he's not in his mental state. So the society is like, they won't understand, they won't get, because how he behaves with you and how he behaves with the society is completely different. And then also the financial challenges, yes. And also, like now, if in our home setup, is that it's not only one person who is chronically sick. Now, even now, having him maybe staying with my mom and my other brother, it's a challenge because it's not safe for them. Utaficha kisu, hizo lazima. My mom has to hide because wakati he is very sick, atashika hizo kisu. Yes, to harm somebody because he's not okay. Mtaficha nini. So even his future, like now he's old, yes, but sometimes I ask myself, what about his future?
Yes.
There is one thing we've observed also as a family. there is a difference with schizophrenic people. When they are in Nairobi, they are very sick. But my brother, when he moves to my uncle's place, that is in rural area, the guy is okay. He's not using any medicine.
Now that we know the symptoms, what are some of the things that we need to expound in terms of even medication? Yeah, but we'll do that. We need to take a small break right now and come back to the question and answer session as we proceed on this very, very riveting conversation on mental health. So don't go far away.
We are in a current situation that I'm so saddened that I've lived in Nairobi for long enough, but things that I see people do, like you can get somebody just lying there, you just fall down and people are passing. And it's so irritating, like nobody cares. That is the kind of Nairobi we have today, you know? Nobody cares. Everybody will pass. Nobody want to know what is happening or why he or she has fallen down. And so if we can be the way the Bible says, like you should be your brother's keeper, you know? And that is, I think, where we can collect it. Like we need to know your neighbor, your workmate, your classmate, your wherever, so that we help each other.
Most likely inaletangwa sana sana na kusota pia, too much pressure yenye mtu hawezi handle, one cannot handle the pressure, and naweza sema stress, saa zingine hata illness, ugonjwa tu normal inaweza leta mental illness, drugs, of which sometimes even drugs inaweza leta mental illness, things of those sort. Na pia inaletwa na pia lack of exposure.
I think people should talk openly. When these things come, because they are with us, we live with them. People should talk openly. Say, I'm going through this. I'm going through this financial financial problem. I'm going through family mental problem. Family could be from the parents, the sibling, from the spouse. You know, they should talk openly. And when you talk openly, you'll be sorted out, you'll be helped.
Anytime you hear an individual has voiced out that, they are speaking, because out of the heart, the mouth will speak. Out of even now the mind, the mouth will also speak. Someone can be saying, I feel like killing myself. So that is someone people should take a keen interest, pull this person close, more so even introduce a psychologist. We're in that era, maybe a while back where we didn't see the need for psychologists, and counselors. In this era and age, we need those people so that they come and they speak to that person, that before the thing has gone so far, we come and speak to that person and remove them from where they are so that they can seek medical attention, mental attention and all that.
When we see people start to really suffer the effects of mental illnesses, they start from home. The people that get killed, God forbid, are spouses, are children, and we see that happening in the society today. So the reality we have right now is that we are a stressed society. Kenya, most particularly a stress society. If you look at the happiness index, it's crazy. The Scandinavian countries are a lot more happier, and life is good, and you don't hear outside of these cases. But in Kenya, we're in a rat race, and we're caught in some machine that's rolling, and we do not know how to stop the action. But it starts with us. It starts with that awareness. So tell someone, come on. If you're seeing a symptom like, someone is drinking too much, or someone is not keeping to themselves, that's mental illness right there. Do not go like, oh, huyo siku hizi, he's just keeping to, oh, huyo mlevi. Not at all. That's a coping mechanism. Yeah. So, instead of keeping them that simplistic, like, oh, Jane these days is just, rolling with the big boys and running basak. Not at all. It's a coping mechanism, and is a manifestation of mental illness. And before you know it, we are going to get dragged into, buying black new suits to attend his or her funeral. And it becomes your agenda right there. You are going to be dragged into a WhatsApp group to changia so-and-so that's now bedridden because of this and that. Or perhaps you are going to get killed by that person because they're suffering from mental illnesses that have not been cured, and because we are careless, and because we are not brothers keepers.
Welcome back to the second part of Dadas Show, where we get an opportunity to interact with our audience, and the audience gets an opportunity to interact with the panel, of course, in a bid to find lasting solutions. Remember, our topic of the day is mental health, in light of us being in May, which is the Mental Health Awareness Month. So before the break, we had touched on a few things, and I'm sure that my audience have plenty of questions for my panel to actually answer. So remember to get in touch with us on all our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1. So you can reach us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever is fit to you. We will get back to you as soon as possible. So to start us off, we have Kezia. Kezia has a question.
Thank you very much. Mine is to the doctor. We have heard from the rest of the panelists that people do better in different environments. Is there a correlation between a good environment and the patient, or where the patient is based? Because we've heard that some people improve when they go to the countryside and so forth. Thank you. And the patient's wellness.
So yeah, as we had Kellen speak, she talked about her brother. And when individuals with mental disorders, like for instance schizophrenia, tend to be a little bit more heightened reactivity and sensitivity to stimuli. So in how you'd be seated here and a matatu passes by with their honking horns and all that, you'd be like, that's annoying. But then for them, they're very easily triggered by those kinds of noises. So for them, it's louder, it's more stimulating, it's more irritating. So picture Nairobi and how it is. There's the matatus, there's the people hooting at each other. There's all of us walking the bus or the hustle, there's boda. There's a crusade somewhere in the corner. It's a lot of stimuli all at once. But then in the countryside, it's in the morning, it's birds wake you up. It's the sound of birds and animals, the greenery, the wind blowing. That's very soothing. So you find that those patients do better, most of them, not all I'm sure, but most of them do better there, because then there's less stimuli coming to their senses. And so they're not as irritable. So now they're not being as irritable as they would be in Nairobi. So I think that's what usually happens. So yes, there is a correlation between the environment you're in and how you present and how your symptoms present. And even for us who are mentally well, you'll find that even for you, when you go to Shags for the weekend in Easter, you feel better. The air is cleaner, it's quieter, it's calm. You come back to Nairobi and that Monday you're just like, what is this? What is this environment I'm in? So yes, the environment you're in is very related to your mental health and wellness. Yeah.
Okay, then thank you so much, Kezia. I believe the next question is from a gentleman in our audience. We love gentlemen in the audience. A round of applause for our he, for she. Karibu sana, Josken. Josken has a question.
My question was on the influence of parents or caregivers on mental illness towards their kids or their relatives, because sometimes you find that the pressures they go through in life, they project it towards their children, and it may somewhat influence the kids when they grow up. So to what extent does that influence mental illness?
Thank you so much, Josken. That's a fantastic question. Madam Agnes, what does upbringing and parental influence, what role does it play in how somebody turns out mentally?
Thank you, Ashiko. Thank you for the question. When we talk of the children and the family, we do say home is the first incubator to every child. And at the formative years of the children, of course their brains are not developed yet, and they learn through imitation. And they'll imitate what they see happen. And they'll respond based on what they see the mom, the dad, or the caregiver respond. Research has established at the age of 6 years, all of us, human persons, do make a decision. And based on what is happening around them, they will respond in a way that is going to help them survive physically and psychologically. Mm-hmm. If the mother or the father or the caregiver are too loud and they are always probably saying words that are putting them down, or when they say something, they are told, shut up, what are you going to tell us? They zip. And as they grow up, they'll tell themselves, for me to be safe, I need to be quiet. And most of the times as you grow up, you always withdraw. You always fear, like, will it really make sense what I say? Will they appreciate me? So that you may find someone growing up and becomes very quiet, they don't talk, because they were never validated, and they don't know when to say, whether to know that can be said or not said, and that actually becomes a condition that this particular person becomes susceptible to withdrawing, and hence depressive state.
Depressive, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's really well put. So it does play a role, in a nutshell, a very crucial role. Josken, is your question answered? Thank you so much. So our next question is coming from Lucy.
My question goes to Madam Agnes. These days we are hearing words being thrown around. Narcissist, toxic, sadist, all those words that are coming around, especially when we are dealing with relationships. It's being referred, maybe one person is being called a narcissist, another one is called toxic, sadist. Is there anything like that, and what is it all about? And if there is anything like that, how is that impacting relationship?
Mm-hmm. This is in reference to the terms that are thrown to people from one person to the other. Mm-hmm. It's a way of trying to bring out, how you perceive that person as a narcissist. And what is a narcissist? It is a disorder, it's a form of personality disorder where the individual is so much, it can take different dimensions depending on the individual. But fundamentally, someone who is a narcissist is one who always thinks about themselves. Mm-hmm. It is about me, right? And they have no regard to everybody else around them. Everything that is done within a setup, within a home, it's more focused to them. They look at themselves in relation to what is happening around, and they come first, and no one else matters, and they have no regard. However, if they need something from you, they'll get it by whatever means. All right? And they'll bring you closer to you because they want something from you. But after that, they don't have value for anyone. Yeah? They have no value for anyone except themselves. And this is likely to bring conflict in a family. And when you call someone a narcissist, first and foremost, that is your perception about that person. And does he really qualify to be a narcissist? Has he met all the criteria of a narcissist? Probably no. So the way I perceive you is purely based on what I think about you, what I make of you. But you may not be that narcissist, because for us to really ascertain, and probably the doctor will shed some light on that, there is a mechanism of measuring the criteria for one to qualify to be a narcissist. So it's unfair that is being used so liberally, and it is demeaning, and it's an abuse actually, and people should desist. If you want to qualify a person as a narcissist, you can consult a psychologist or a psychiatrist and say, this is what I've been observing. So what do you think, Dr. Ali? Has he met the threshold? So we desist from throwing words. I don't know which one. The other one was toxic.
Toxic has also been thrown around.
What is toxic? What is generally toxic?
Chemicals.
Yeah.
Harmful.
Chemicals.
Yeah. Something that you cannot even take. It's not palatable. It has even the ability even to kill, you know. So when you tell someone is toxic, honestly, what are you talking about? What measure again have you used to qualify that person as a toxic? There is toxic environment, toxic relationships, toxic parents. There is a book by a psychologist called Susan, which the title is The Toxic Parents. And when you need that book, when you read that book, you will understand what toxicity means. Yeah, I cannot define it in one word or two words, because one, being toxic is first, you'll never acknowledge other people's feelings, right? Number two, when the environment is toxic, the communication has broken down. People talk at each other, not to each other. In a toxic environment, there is abuse. There is abuse, both physical and emotional. Yeah? And that is usually practiced so much within a marriage setup, where people will not say exactly what is making them behave the way they are behaving, but they'll just be silent. They'll not talk. You'll never discuss anything. They'll never hear you out. They'll never value you. And then that, the observer, if I'm the one who is the victim, probably I say, it's so toxic. Nobody understands me. Nobody hears me. Nobody compliments me. I am never validated. Nobody relates with me. And that is also another environment can really escalate the symptoms of the disorder. Right?
Yeah.
So what we say is that, kindly, if anyone asks you, tells you that you are toxic, you can slowly, very, very quietly and calmly ask them, kindly tell me what it is that you've seen in me that qualifies me to be toxic or to be a narcissist.
Like a chemical.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's very well put, and I think there was a part that I think really hit home with me in terms of something that is objective and subjective. Am I calling this person? Am I feeling like this person is a narcissist because it's an observation I have made, or it is a fact? Is it a fact? Is this person like this? Is this known? And we've gone to Daktari, and Daktari has said, so this is it. So I think most of the time when we are dealing, especially in regards to our opinion on mental health, we really need to, before, as we make our observations on each other and judgments as we pass, is this judgment subjective or it's objective? Am I saying something that is based off fact, or am I saying something based off how it made me feel? So if it makes me feel like this today, it could make me feel like this tomorrow. So it's really neither here nor there. So I hope that question has been answered for you. Okay, so we will move on to our next question. Our next question is by Carol.
My question is to Dr. Stacy. I've been a high school teacher for a long time, and you notice that in preparing particularly candidates for KCSA, they will have their normal classes. They have to attend their normal classes after 4. At night, they will have examinations. The teacher has given assignments. So you find that this student has an exam to read for, has to attend class, and has to do assignments. So most of the time, they will sleep past 11. And then they have to wake up early in the morning because they didn't finish their assignment. My question to you, Daktari, does this have an impact on these young minds? Are we sacrificing our children in pursuit of A grades?
So that's a very good question. So sleep, I like that she's pointed out sleep. They're sleeping probably 3-4 hours a night. And this is not for a day or two, it's for 4 years, from when they get Form 1 till the end of it. And sleep is one of the most important things that we have as human beings, as a species, to help us regulate ourselves, to help us grow when we're young, to help us function when we're adults. So at that age group, it's a very difficult age for this to be happening to them because their minds are young, they're pliable. This is when they're supposed to be getting equipped with the skills, psychological skills, not this day-to-day, you're learning your biology, you're learning your geography. We're talking about psychological skills to survive in the world as adults. So when a child is sleeping 3 hours a night, when the recommended, that has been tried, tested, studies have been done, is 8 hours of sleep a night, that's less than half. So this child is not getting optimum sleep to grow, to develop, and also to create a psychological welfare for themselves to run through the rest of their lives. So on top of that, it's also been studies that prolonged stress to the brain makes it change chemically. So by the 4th year, this child has only been sleeping 2-3 hours. Their brain is now adapted to stress. It's in a high stress state. Like for them, the world is a stressful place. So their brains have adapted to that, producing more hormones like cortisol for the stress hormone, and that is detrimental to their sleep, to their to their growth, to their well-being. And that's when you find things like the burning of the schools, all those misdemeanors that happen that are excused by adolescents.
Yes.
When in reality, these children are just not mentally healthy. So I think the prolonged trauma to their brains, I'd like to call it trauma because 3 hours of sleep is trauma. So that is going to have a detrimental effect. And if you talk to them afterwards, like I have friends who were in that system in boarding schools, and I talk to them, and to this day you can see they're still a little traumatized by it. They're a bit traumatized when they have to perform, or when they're in stressful situations. They have a hard time adapting to it because their brains, when they're supposed to grow, you know that 15 to 18 is a very formative age. When they're supposed to learn how to adapt to stress, they didn't learn. They didn't even have time to figure out what adapting is. So that's something that you now come and find that young adults in university, this is when they're hearing mental health for the first time. This is when they're being told about self-care for the first time. And so it takes a longer time for them to adjust and learn how to cope. And that's where you find things like substance abuse coming in. Things like escapism with watching TV for hours and hours, because that's an easier way for your brain to cope than to be like, okay, I have this task to do. How do I make it happen and still have time for resting and still have time for my family and all these things? So instead of these children learning how to, psychologically cope with life, they are being
They're shutting down.
Yeah, they're shutting
They're
down.
shutting
I think that's what I can
down.
call it. They're
Yeah.
shutting down.
They're shutting down, and it's quite unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's very counterproductive because, especially like you said with candidates, this is the time when they should be sleeping the most. This is when they should be resting, because the 8 hours in class should be okay because they've been in school for 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's very counterproductive because in the high stress situation, and for them it's very stressful because KCSE is once. So for them it's like do or die.
It's do or die. It
And
has
they're not
also
resting.
been pushed down there. And we did have that conversation, and I believe in, where we were talking about the unrest and the mental health of our students. What's happening to them? Why were we getting to a point where schools were being burnt and everything like that? But that is so well put. And now we have come to the end of today's very informative, insightful, and interactive conversation that we have had on mental health. So my 2 cents is pretty much this. You know, poor mental health is a society problem. It really is. We like to think it's Kellen's family's problem, but it is a society problem, and it affects each and every single one of us. And as our panelists pointed out, there are different reasons that attribute to this. So gone are the days where we could just pretend that this is not happening. So the honors are to us to educate ourselves, to familiarize ourselves, to sensitize ourselves. Government institutions, you know, schools, hospitals, you know, any single person who is in a position of authority. The honors are to you right now to sensitize yourself and your staff on mental health, and then we can be able to really coexist in an extremely diverse society. So on behalf of my production team at KBC, my location partner Ngong Hills Hotel, and myself Ashiku Mbune, I wish you a very empathetic week. I'll see you the same time, same place next week. Bye bye for now.